Hello and welcome to Geekverse Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more here on the Geekverse Podcast Network. I am your host, the freelancer, Dylan Muss, and I have with me the counterpart, Kirklin Patzer. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. Blue skies out there. Always a great time to jump into Sidequest. Not that it's like weather permitted, because this is definitely an indoor thing we do, but still.
We're an
I just feel-
all-weathers podcast here over at Geekverse.
It just
Unless
makes me
it's
happier,
storms
though.
and we don't have power, then we're no good.
I'm in a better mood when it's, let alone doing a Sidequest episode with you, but also when it's a nice blue sky day. Bird blue day.
Yeah. No, I'm in a good mood too. I was just listening to some the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, which always gets me in a good, nostalgic, happy mood. And we just have a bunch of fun stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about a bunch of the games we've been playing, including Hitman, Kirby. You got some Warhammer over there and a bunch of other stuff. And we have some fun news as well. We're going to break down a Dead Island 2 trailer breakdown that just came out, gameplay breakdown. Counter-Strike 2, we're going to break that. And then Dragon Ball Z, Budokai, Tenkaichi, we'll break down all that stuff. So it's just a very fun-filled episode here. A bit of a sporadic mess, but those are my favorite SideQuest episodes, when it's just a bunch of random little things that we are excited about. So just a few plugs before we get into that. The Arcane retrospective, the first 2 episodes of that are up right now on Patreon, but it is now, we're into March, we're approaching Redfall's release date here, so I think March 10th, which is this Friday, is going to be the first episode dropping, so Arx Vitalis on the main feeds is when that's coming out, and then it's going to be every week you're going to get 1 episode of that, so it's going to be a whole bunch of that, and that's very exciting times. But as I said, also Patreon, you can get those episodes early. Obviously, Arcs and Dark Messiah are up there pretty early. Everything else might just be a week or 2, because we're going to be recording these things pretty soon here. So you can still at least get some stuff a little bit early over there. We're also reviewing Last of Us on a weekly basis. We're almost done with that. Just one more episode there next week for the finale, so you go check that out. Join the Discord, leave a review. That helps a lot, whether that's on Spotify, the star rating, or on Apple Podcasts, and a little written review. Do that. I appreciate that. Just Patreon in general, a good place to hang out. There's a ton of stuff going on there. And also, you're probably going to get, right now we're releasing the John Wick retrospective. I'm going to be doing a retrospective little solo cast for John Wick Hex, the game. That'll be up there a bit early on Patreon as well. I think I'm going to record that this Friday, so maybe this weekend is when you can expect that. So Patreon, great time right now for SideQuest stuff, as well as all the other X-Men and Evil Dead and just all the other crazy stuff we're doing over there. And I don't know if I have anything else. This week, what do we got? We got 65 and Scream 6. I believe both those come out and are going to get reviewed, not by me and Kirkland, but I don't, you're right, you're not going to either of those, right?
I'm seeing 65.
Oh, you
I'll
are?
be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll be on that one. We have reviews for both of those. And all other sorts of good stuff. Anything else that you would like to plug there, Mr. Kirkland-Patzer?
I don't think so. I think you hit all the marks.
Awesome. Let's get right into it then, and we'll start by talking about some of the games we've been playing. I have a bunch of little quick hits here. So as I just mentioned, those retrospectives, John Wick, Hex, I've been playing through that. I'll save my thoughts for that, but that is a really interesting, weird kind of tactics game that I'm really enjoying. And then I wanted to bring this up because we were talking about this on the Arcane retrospective. That I was like, okay, I've played Dishonored so many times in my life. I was looking at my Steam hours. I got like 65. You have been beat by like a few hours on Dishonored 1 playtime. So part of me was like, ooh, I kind of want to like get more hours than Kirkland Patzer here. But also it's just been so long. And it's one of those things where I booted up the game just to get familiar with it, taking notes for the retro. And then I started to play through, and then I just rolled credits on the main story
Nice.
last night. I just couldn't
bad
stop. No, it's not a bad thing. And it was. I'm really glad I did, because I have a lot of just new thoughts on the game now, because it has been a long time since I've played through it.
Right.
Once again, I'm gonna save all that. I'm holding back here on this
Yeah.
main show. I'm gonna save it for the retro. But it was one of those things, man. Like, and it's pretty quick, because I know the game still very well. That I got through it like pretty fast, and I was not really paying attention to like doing a ghost playthrough or anything. Like I was kind of just zipping through it. But I'm gonna take more time with the DLC, because I don't know if I've ever actually done a second playthrough of that stuff. So I'm on to the Knife of Dunwall right now. So that's been fun. For that, I realized that I've never actually got like a low chaos. Like I've never completed a low chaos run in the DLC. Like I said, I maybe have only done one playthrough, so I'm doing that, which is fun. But you've been playing a little bit Dishonored too. Do you want to say anything about that, or do you want to save your thoughts?
I think the only thing I'll say here is just like because I've played that game, I mean, clearly less time than you now. But like still like that was one of my favorite like action adventure games like that, and I just played it through so many times, probably rolled credits like probably more than 5 times, I'd say. Like every once in a while I was just like, let's just jump in there and have fun. And like the audio cues, whether it's like the little guards like songs or something, I just know them so well. I'm like singing along as they come along, or just like any like of the little like sounds of like your movement or stepping on things. It just hits really well for me, and I just have so many fond memories like the first time I played that game. But not even just that, it's like also like multiple playthroughs. I like have nostalgic thoughts of like, oh, I remember the first time I discovered this, and like it wasn't on my first playthrough. So yeah, I'll obviously go into detail in that with you and Dante. That'll be a really fun one, because the first games of the Arcane Retro I never played, but this one will be a lot more passionate, I think, for myself.
Yeah, we were all on even footing for those first 2 games, and it'll be fun to go into Dishonored, where we all have different histories with it, and we are going to have Tyler Briggs join us for that episode as well. So if anyone has any questions, topics, thoughts on Dishonored, send them my way, because we're recording that next week, so you still have a lot of time. But yeah, send any of those questions in. I'd love to include some of that stuff in there. Some of my other quick hits here. So we talked about on the Nintendo Direct that we broke down that they added Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. A couple games from the Game Boy library I wanted to shout out. One is Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins. I've never played a Super Mario Land game. I've played World, Super Mario Bros, and all sorts of spin-offs and stuff. And I don't really know what the whole Land series is like, but at least for this one, a really weird and interesting game for Mario, because, it's that classic 2D platforming that you know and love, but the structure is quite different. It kind of has that Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World structure of, you can go to, there is like a linear progression, but you can also go to like additional optional missions or go to buildings and get stuff. But like the whole game is like that. You are just dropped into this world and you can go to any of the 6 worlds like first. It's kind of like Mega Man in that way. Not that you get abilities like from completing a world, but you can kind of go in and out. But more than that, it's such a weird and feels like a very experimental game. Just in terms of levels, because most Mario games have like those classic like desert biome level or ice world and stuff like that. But this one has like not even a Halloween theme, but it's like a pumpkin themed world. It has like a Mario themed world where you're going into like a giant animatronic Mario. There's like a turtle world, a space one with like stars and moons and all this stuff.
Wow.
So just like very strange, and beyond, because of these weird environments too, you get all sorts of enemy types that I've just never seen ever used again. And there's a ton of them. Like, and not that they're doing anything terribly interesting. They're just moving around as Koopas and Goombas would, but it's just a very interesting game. Like if anyone, if you got the, you don't need the Nintendo Switch Plus or expansion pass, whatever it's called. You don't need that for the Game Boy games. So if you just have the regular online, you can go check that one out, and definitely worth it. It's a pretty short game. I beat it in like probably less than 2 hours. I think most of the Game Boy games are pretty short. I think that console just had a very small amount of memory they could have. So most of the games are pretty short. So speaking of that, I also played through Kirby's Dreamland, which is the very first Kirby game. It was pretty fun to go back to the roots of this thing. And the thing that blew my mind the most, Kirklin, is that this game did not have copy abilities in it. That was not a thing in the original Kirby game, right? Which is like the defining quality of what Kirby is. You can suck up enemies and you shoot them out like in the star. Yeah. And you can like shoot out, I think you can still shoot out like the smoke if you're like jumping in the air. Right. Or it's probably not smoke. Kirby's not vaping. It's
just vaping, yeah.
It's breath. But so you can do all that stuff. But yeah, there's no copy abilities. There's a lot of those classic enemies that you know and love, but you can't cutter mode or sword mode or any of that stuff.
That's wild.
It's also a very short game. The whole thing took me like 45 minutes to beat the whole game. So
that's very short.
Once again, for the history lesson of it, to go back and play the original Kirby game and see what it was before copy abilities, which is like, a pretty generic little platformer, but it's like short. It's a short and sweet experience. That was really cool to go back and see this weirdo game. And I think it was with the sequel when they introduced copy abilities. Oh, okay. And that became, who the character was from that point on. But it was really interesting to see that that's not even where Kirby started. It was just a basic platformer.
Did Kirby have that ability in like the first Smash on 64?
Yeah. So, I mean, this released on the Game Boy in like, what was that, 1990 or whenever the Game Boy was active, like the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And the first Smash was 99. So by that time, Kirby had like probably 5 or 6 games at that point, or maybe 3
Wow.
or 4, something like that. So yeah, the copy abilities were in the original Smash, and that's always been like the defining characteristic of
Yeah.
who that character is in Smash. So yeah, obviously they based a lot of that off those characters pretty well.
Man, that's wild. Kirby's
Mhm.
more OG than I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty old school character. And I mean, the fun thing with Kirby too is that the creator of Smash, Sakurai, was the designer of that original Kirby game. So
okay.
that's what has been a character close to his heart. Also, I think he worked on the original Earthbound, which is why Ness is one of those like original 12 Smash characters. Very
It all
weird
makes
deep
sense.
cut, but like since he worked on it, obviously he
Yeah.
wants to put that character in there, and Kirby made a lot of sense in that way too. So yeah, people should check that out. I'll be talking about another Kirby game in a little bit here, but I wanted to shout that out. And then these are two just quick hits that we've talked about before, but Hogwarts Legacy and Fire Emblem Engage, still making my way through those. I've been so busy
Nice.
playing stuff, and the Arcane Retros kept me busy, but I'm still working my way through. I think Hogwarts, like I probably came off pretty negative in that review, and I think it's just because I almost wanted the game to be a bit something different than it was, but
Yeah.
like it is still just fun to romp around in this open world and do stuff, and I think it was good for me after the review too to like, sometimes when we're doing that, and especially with this one, it wasn't like game come out Thursday, we review Monday is usually how it goes on Sidequest. So it's
Yeah.
usually not a full review. It's like, okay, we're just playing a lot in this weekend. But since we had like a week and a half long period, I feel like I just played too much and like burnt myself out
Yeah.
on it in that way. But since then, like since that review, I took like a 2-week break. I wasn't really thinking about it. But then I just like jumped back in sometime in the last few days, and yeah, just had like a good time just romping around. And like it's one of those things I just put a podcast on and just go do whatever. I'm kind of like tuned out of the story in some way, but it was fun to go back to that, and I do, because you mentioned on the review that there's like several moments that you didn't want to spoil for us, but you thought were really special. So I think it's one that I'll try to roll credits on the main story, since the main story doesn't seem too long, and do like
Yeah.
any side quests that are pertinent for characters I'm really interested in. But it's been fun to dip back into that one. I'm guessing you haven't gone back since you actually did finish the main story, but do you have any intentions to, now that we're a couple weeks out from that review? Do you think you'll go back at all?
It's interesting because like one of the most negative things I think I had on the review was just like the lack of end game like stuff in there.
that's
Like
fair.
like you even brought up the point where like you wanted to like be able to like these friends that you're meeting in school to just like go adventuring with them. Like even if that was possible, like I would just go out and do Merlin trials like with whoever, whether it's Sebastian or Poppy or anything like that. Like I feel like the side characters they introduced were interesting enough for me that I wanted to do stuff with them, but like that's just lacking for what they gave me. So I think when I rolled credits, it was just like, okay, I'm ready for the review. I got what I wanted out of it. Shay hasn't like she's just done like the starting portion, and then life gets busy, but she does want to jump back in there for sure. So I think that'll be fun to just like even just experience it with her. Obviously I've already experienced her, but just see what kind of different trajectories she goes. Not that there's a lot of like significant like choice where you're like, oh, this character's gonna get killed off if you make this decision. Like it's not that intense, but
we even talked about in the review just like some of the house differences, which aren't even
That's a good
immediately
point,
obvious
yeah.
what they are going to be, but it seems like each house does have a couple unique elements or certain quests or characters you just might not meet. Or obviously me and Taylor went to Azkaban, you guys never did. So like,
Yeah.
there's little things like that I'm sure will be interesting, that maybe more differences than you're even expecting when you watch her play.
Absolutely, because she went Gryffindor. So was there anyone? I can't remember. Nobody
None
on
of
our
us
review
did,
was.
no.
Yeah, Taylor pulled
Taylor
a quick one on us.
He hit me with the Hufflepuff Shuffle on that one.
Did you see? I don't know if it was IGN or someone posted. It was like a quick clip of someone in a Slytherin common room, and a certain basilisk was slithering around or something. They were
interesting.
walking up these stairs, and it's like pretty obvious that it's like a huge snake just like storming
It's
across
like not
the
a
hallway really
statue,
quick.
like it's a real.
No, yeah, it's
okay.
moving, and like I'm not Slytherin, but like I just saw that clip and I'm like, that is fascinating. And
Right.
like you do go to an area that looks like the opening of the Chamber of Secrets, just like the girls' bathroom or whatever it is. Like you can see the same sinks that they had in the movie, but like obviously you don't interact with it at all. So in my mind, I'm like, maybe they add like some sort of DLC or something in the future, because like the game is magical enough that I had a fantastic time with it. It's just a bit of a letdown that like I put in all these hours. Not that the hours were bad, but like I don't really have I don't really have a lot to like bring me back into the game, which is kind of unfortunate. But still, it's still magical. I still really enjoyed that first playthrough for sure.
Yeah, I think they announced that it's already hit like 12 million copies sold or something like that.
Crazy,
So,
man.
I mean, I think more DLC is imminent. I just also saw today that they delayed the PS4, Xbox One versions because those were coming out later, and they just pushed them back a bit more, like by a few weeks to like May 8th or 10th or something like that. So those versions got kicked back a little bit. So I'm sure after those versions are out, Switch, I think they announced, right? So I'm sure it's a cloud version, but like once those versions are out, maybe we'll get more information on DLC, or I don't know, maybe they just go straight into a follow-up game. I don't know what they want to do there, but I'm sure we'll hear about that before the end of the year. Hopefully by like those summer announcements, we get like a breakdown about some of that stuff, or I don't know, maybe one of those like WB like DC kind of events things. Maybe that's where we could see something more about that. I know PlayStation has advertised it a lot, so maybe that's something they would do too. But yeah, I'm curious to see what else is coming for that game. In terms of like the Chamber of Secrets and things like that, it'd be interesting how they tackle some of that stuff since it is a prequel way before like the events of like what is actually interesting going on there hasn't like happened yet. But like I don't know, that could be it would still be fun to just go there for some nostalgia's sake, even like that thing from the Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone, I always forget what it is, when you're going through that room and there's all those vines, you gotta like get the key, and then there's a giant chess game. Like it'd be fun to like go through that sequence too in some way, even if it was like just some weird like DLC where it's not actually happening, it's like some weird magical realm. I don't know, they could get away with cheesing it, something like that. And then Fire Emblem Gauge, I don't think I have too much to say here, but I just wanted to shout this out because even last night I just went through another level. I think I've soured a little bit on the game since our review. I think I was very positive there, but just playing the game more, I think for me, one of the things I did mention on the review is I feel like some of the balance is out of whack with these rings, and probably largely because of the way the DLC is handled in this game with this day one and week one DLC, where it's like, how do you balance a game that way? And I think my thoughts on that have only solidified, where I just feel like this game is very imbalanced. I've played so many of these games, but it is way too hard in a way that feels unfair, where your units just get one shot. And since you have so many units in this game compared to other Fire Emblems, it's like I want to level up a bunch of characters, and I think if you just stuck with like I'm always using the exact same 12 characters, you probably would have less of a problem with this. But since I like want to use all these characters, it's given me, my character levels are just going to be lower because of that, and then people just get one shot like crazy. So at one point I did drop the game down to normal difficulty. Unfortunately, you can't turn it back up after you've done that change, so I can't like tweak it on the fly. But then even last night, this mission I was doing was kicking my ass on normal, where some of my units were getting one shot. So I do feel like the balance is way out of whack. And with the way this DLC is rolling out, the more I see of it, I don't think I'll pick it up. So I guess I don't know when I'll do another playthrough with like a higher difficulty, knowing more knowledge about the game. I'm still enjoying it enough just for like the basic Fire Emblem minute-to-minute stuff, and I like a lot of the characters now that I've gotten deeper into the game. But it definitely has a bunch of issues that I don't know. I can't come up with a reason why these issues exist other than this weird DLC rollout and just not having enough time to balance it properly for both the base game and the DLC content on top of that. So some more thoughts there, but I'm still enjoying it for what it is. I do want to, once again, roll credits on that one as well.
So is it one of those things where like they're really just trying to stress the use of these rings? Like it's unplayable without using units that have access to these Fire Emblem rings or something like that, you think?
It's a couple things. Well, this is a slight spoiler for one point in the game, but at one point you lose a bunch of the rings that you have gained to that point, and you're kind of starting fresh with a couple other rings, and then eventually you get all of them back. But there's this element of the game where you're like, when you get these rings, there's certain skills and stuff that you have on those characters, and then you can like inherit those skills onto your characters permanently. So even if you're not holding that ring, you would have that skill. But you don't know that this point is coming to the game when you lose all your rings. So I think that's a big thing too, where it should tell you like, obviously it doesn't want to spoil the story moment that's about to happen, but at the same time, it really should tell you in some way, like you should be inheriting skills like right now, because you're about to lose all these characters and all these potential skills that you've been relying on to this point. So I think that's one point, which is like on a second playthrough, that would not be an issue because you know it's coming. And I don't think there's a New Game Plus yet where you have all the rings in there. But then also like the ring abilities are really OP. Most of them are like you just get a free one-shot kill on an enemy. So I wonder how that they factor that into the balance, where it's like, okay, we're putting more units than we normally would for a level like this because you have abilities that are going to one-shot the units. But then like if you're not using those, or if you didn't put this emblem ring in this section of the map where these extra units are, I don't know. I just feel like there's so many extra variables because of these rings, and then you factor in the DLC on top of that not everyone's going to have access to, because that's, once again, I'm talking about this, how there's that point in the game where you lose all your rings, but if you have the DLC, you'd have still a bunch of rings at that point, whereas me, I had like 1 or 2 rings at that point. I'm like, shit, I'm down to nothing here, so I'm much weaker. So yeah, I don't know, it's hard to pinpoint one reason. I think it's a bunch of different things coming in there, but yeah, I wanted to shout that game out at least a little bit.
For sure.
I want to talk about Hitman. How about we take our first break? We'll come back and we'll break down what's going on in the world of Assassination. Okay, we are back. Kirklin, there was a big rebrand thing with Hitman, like it happened in like January, February. Do you know what's going on with this? Did you hear anything about this?
No, so fill me in, please.
Yeah, I'll fill you in because I'm sure it's very confusing for the audience as well. So there was these 3 Hitman games that came out in the last few years, right? I think it was 2016 with Hitman 2 in 2018, 2021 was Hitman 3, and then for 2 and 3 there's been some DLC levels on top of that. One thing that they did with Hitman 3 was, since these games are very iterative, right? Like they essentially, it's the exact same mechanics and all that stuff. They made it so if you own Hitman 3 and then you also own Hitman 1 and 2, you could import those levels into Hitman 3. So Hitman 3 was just this big, huge, gargantuan game with all like 20 whatever it is levels.
Sounds like Warhammer.
Yeah, it's pretty much that exact same thing. So the change they made a few weeks ago, a month ago, whatever it was they rebranded the game. So now they've taken, I guess, Hitman 1 and 2, they've like delisted those, and I think they've delisted Hitman 3. And now it's just Hitman World of Assassination is what it's called. You buy Hitman World of Assassination, you get all 3 of those games worth of levels, all the DLC levels. Everything is bundled into one package, and it's like, $80 game, like just a regular standard price there. And then there's like additional, you can buy like cosmetic stuff on top of that. But you just need one thing now. So that's really great. It makes it much less confusing. Now I don't have to caveat like, oh, like you should buy Hitman 3, but then like buy the Hitman 2 levels specifically because they're really good. And like, oh, but you also want to play these ones from Hitman 1. It's like, now you just buy this thing. You can play the levels in whatever order. The story, there's a story, but like, who cares? Just play these levels. If you think going to Paris sounds cool, go to Paris. If you want to go to the Maldives, like those islands, go there. Like, just pick whatever looks interesting to you and do that. So they did this rebrand. Okay, now it's World of Assassination, which is also currently on Game Pass, so you can go play that right now. But then also with this, they introduced a new mode to the game called Freelancer, which is what our name is alluding to. And Freelancer is essentially a roguelike mode added onto what the formula of Hitman is. So you go into this Hitman mode, you have like this safe house that you're going into between these missions, and you're picking these different campaigns that might be like a string of 3 levels, or as you get further in this in through this mode, you get like more campaigns that you're doing at a time and stuff like that. Rather than having the set targets that are on every map that you've gotten used to at this point, learned how to kill them in 100 different ways, essentially you just load in and there are just a random, between 1 and like 6 or more targets, and they're just random people in this world. And then you're going to have bonus objectives on top of it. Like maybe you have to get a kill with a silenced gun, or maybe you like try and get a kill by like burning someone or killing them with an axe or pushing them off a cliff. You get like random objectives on top of that, and then like bonus, like even harder objectives. And as you're going through this mode, you're building up this currency, and you're just trying to get through. And the biggest change here is that, in most stealth games, it's all about like save scumming. Anytime you're about to do something risky, you get quick saves so that you can reload. But this is a roguelike, and this is freelancer mode, so there's no saving whatsoever. So the consequences are just heightened by a million times, and everything you're doing is like, oh god, this might not work. And Hitman, not an action game. So if shit goes wrong for you, it's not like Dishonored where you could like escape, climb onto a rooftop, wait for the enemies to de-aggro and try again. Like, you will probably die. And there's also situations too where like if you start a ruckus accidentally, your target might get like signaled, and then they might just escape the level. And so if you don't kill them, you can still like sometimes continue with the campaign. The way it works is like there might be like 2 or 3 levels leading up to a final level in a section, and that final level, like, you have to succeed there. But the other ones, you can die or you can not get your target, and then you can like still progress. You're gonna not get as many rewards and stuff like that.
Right.
And then in the roguelike way, or roguelite, I should say, as you're going along, you're unlocking new equipment and stuff like that. You have a big weapon wall that you're filling out as you go through the game. Different equipment, you get different rewards and things like that you can bring into these levels. So it's a really, really great way to experience Hitman. I don't know if it's the best way to play as a new player. If you're just jumping into a world assassination, I think you might want to go and just like play the default levels and figure out like the targets that were designed for each one of those levels, learn what's going on, do those a bunch of times. But even going into this, I've played, like Miami is one of the great maps. It's kind of like an F1 race, so you'd really like this map. And I've done this map. I've probably done like 20 playthroughs of this thing, right? Like doing all these different challenges, all this different stuff. And immediately Freelancer, just because the way this thing is designed, there were like various sections of this map I had never seen before, never interacted with, because they're not really on the main path. They're just kind of ancillary things on the edges. But now those become just like part of the level, and you have this mini level within this thing that you've never really experienced before. So Hitman was already just one of the greatest games. I talked about this last week. I was complaining about the always online element of the game. That is the one thing that sucks, and I hate about it. But everything else is like, this is one of the greatest games ever. And if you were to punish me and say, Dylan, you can only play one game for the next calendar year, and you give me Hitman, I'm happy with that. That's all I need. Like, it is such an in-depth game with so much to do. It already had so much to do, but now they've just thrown on this like roguelike mode that is amazing, and I've just been absolutely hooked on. And it came out like a month and a half ago, and I haven't talked about it yet because I've just been playing it relentlessly, and I kind of wanted to talk about it with you when I had you on the side quest here, so it's a good timing for this. But I think truly the best way I can sell this is by just sharing a couple stories that I've had of going through this mode, so I want to share a couple. So one here is I stroll up into Italy. My objective here is I think I need to I can get a bonus objective to like get a headshot kill, and that'll give me bonus coins essentially. And I also picked a time trial for this. So if I beat the level in like 2 minutes, get in, assassinate, escape within 2 minutes, I get like a huge reward. So that's like, okay, that's really hard to do. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try this.
You can do it.
Yeah, what I've learned is I thought I was good at Hitman. I am so bad at Hitman, but I'm getting so much better with each time I'm practicing and learning more about these levels. So I load into this level. I clue into the Hitman vision thing. I'm trying to find where the target is, and I'm like, shit, I cannot find them anywhere. Like it's like a red highlight, for where they are on the map. I'm looking everywhere, like get off this bench. I'm like, man, I cannot find this target for the life of me. And the time's clicking down. It's like, God, I don't know what to do here. But then I realized that I couldn't see them because I was just overlooking it, and they were literally on the bench right next to me.
Oh my God!
Because it's freelancer mode, and it's like it's a random unit, right? Normally they're like in some fortress, whatever it is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They were literally right next to me. So I take up my gun in broad daylight, shoot him in the head, and like get in this car and escape and beat the level in like 20 seconds or something like that. Which was just such an amazing feeling that, I mean, like there's already like a big speedrun incentive in the main game, but I don't know, this was just such a fun like random variable to this thing. And part of the thing too with the main game is you're usually trying to get the silent assassin rating on your levels to get like more XP, and that's kind of like the ultimate goal of what you're doing,
right?
Which is like to beat the level without getting spotted, hiding the body of like the target and stuff like that.
It's very Hitman. I feel like that's like the base way you probably should play Hitman.
Exactly, and that's how the base game is like built. Is like you're just learning about these levels, but then after you are pretty familiar with them, then try and get silent assassin rating, and then try and get silent assassin suit only, where you don't use any disguises and all this stuff. It like ratchets up the difficulty. But freelancer mode, not necessarily. You can sometimes take on a silent assassin like bonus objective, but for the most part, you're just like, it doesn't really matter if you get silent assassin or not. So that's why it makes for a situation like this, where I can just take up my gun when there's 100 people around me on the streets of Italy, and I can just take this person out with a quick headshot and escape the level. So that was a very good moment. I had this other mission where I was in the hotel in Bangkok, and one of the bonus objectives I had was a pretty tricky one where I had to get a kill with an axe. There's not a lot of axes in the world, right? Because it's like a hotel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm like walking around a bunch. I'm like trying to find an axe. I'm like, maybe there's like a fire station, like a fire axe or something like that.
Good thinking.
Yeah, and I'm like, maybe that would be in like one of the employee-only sections. So I cruise around. I find some employee, knock him out, take his outfit. And then I'm like kind of in the behind, the background area. And then I do find an axe, and I'm like, okay, the problem is now you can't just walk around with an axe. People get mad at you if you're running around with a huge fire axe. So I'm like, okay, where's my target? Conveniently, they're like actually not that far away. They're like doing laps essentially in the background outside the hotel. And so I'm like, okay, they're actually only a couple rooms away. So if I clear out everyone in that path, then I can like maybe get them in a position to use this fire axe on them. So there's a couple employees. I bait one of them, knock him out, hide him in a closet, bait the other one, knock him out. There's a couple guards. I bait them, one by one, taking them out. But then I get to this point where I'm like, shit, I've done all this. And I realize that the exact path he walks in to the doorway, which I'm trying to get him through so I can hit him with his axe, there's a camera right there, and I don't really have a way to get rid of this camera so conveniently. But what I do have is I have like a proximity mine, and I'm like, okay, here's my idea. I'm going to throw this proximity mine, stick it up on the wall like where the camera is, and then I'll throw like something at it, blow it up. It might cause a bit of a scene for a bit, but like I don't think anyone will know it's me. So I can do this, then I can fade into the shadows for a bit, and then I can come back and try and get this guy. So I throw my proximity mine, but I didn't realize that it doesn't stick to walls. So it just bounced off the wall, landed on the ground. And then I'm like, shit, someone's going to see this, walk up to it and blow up and cause a scene. I'm going to kill a non-target. It's going to be this whole thing. So I'm like, hey, whatever. I'll just go pick this up and I'll try again. I go to pick it up, but it just blows up and kills me. So I've spent like 20, 30 minutes like setting up this perfect crime, got my axe and all this stuff. And I just blow up and die. And I'm like, shit.
World's worst assassin.
Yeah, exactly. Worst assassin whatsoever. There's a bunch of bodies lying around. But like, I didn't even care that I lost the objective because it came with this just amazing scenario. And I'll share one more story, which was I was at this it's this weird hospital on top of this like ski mountain in Japan. Really cool level. Another one that you would really like. Nice. And in this one, it's pretty tricky. I'm like trying to find my target. And in some of these missions, you'll have like 4 suspects, and you're almost playing like a game of Guess Who. Like you have hints like they have blonde hair, they're wearing glasses, they have earrings on. And then you'll have a couple habits of theirs, like this person likes to, they're a smoker, something like that, or they like to eat food, so you'll find them eating food and stuff like that. So I'm cruising around trying to like narrow down who my targets are by following them. Maybe if they don't have blonde hair, okay, whatever, cross them off my list, or trying to find what their tells are. All this thing, I spent a lot of time doing this. Like it takes a long time, especially when there's people on the lookout for you, so you can't just walk around everywhere. Yeah. So I really got to take my time with it. But I'm collecting some items and all that. And then eventually I'm like, okay, I think it's kind of down to like one of these 2 people. So I'm near this one target. I'm like, I think he goes into this one room. So I'm going to wait for him to go to this room. I'm hiding in this other random hallway. But then I wasn't looking behind me in this hallway, and one of the other suspects like just came up behind me when I wasn't looking, and she, like, some people can just see through your disguise, so she saw right through my disguise, and she's like, oh shit, this is like the guy who's coming after me kind of thing. So I'm like, this is not good. So I just take a club or a crowbar, whatever I had in my pocket, and I just like throw it at her head, knock her out. But then there's some other fucking guy down the hallway, and he witnessed this whole altercation going down, so he's now freaking out. I'm like, you know what? I just fucked up so bad. There is no way I'm getting out of this. So what I do is I exit the room, and that guy who I was chasing, who might be my target, I'm like, I just got to kill this guy in broad daylight. I got to hope he's my suspect. I don't know for sure yet, but I just got to go for it. So I take out the shotgun I have in my pocket. I blast him down. I got to blast a couple guards. And then it's like, this was not your suspect. So I'm like, oh, fuck. And now that I've done all this, now the actual suspect is trying to escape. They're going to run to an exit. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to kill them. I'm just going to try and escape too. So I go down to where there's a, what is it called? Like a chairlift kind of thing. What do they call chairlift when you go inside
gondola.
of it? Yeah, a gondola. Yeah, exactly. So I go down to the gondola, and I'm like, man, okay, there's a couple guards. I take them out, and then I'm just scanning the level, and I'm realizing, okay, actually, my target, he's trying to escape, but he's coming to the gondola, so this just might work out. So he's coming down, but he has a bunch of guards with him, and it's like this whole like John Wick moment where I have like various guns, I'm like trying to reload. I take out like 4 or 5 guards. I take out this guy. He ends up being the actual suspect. So it worked. And then thankfully, I'm right by the exit now. I'm right at the gondola. So I just get off on this gondola and I'm out of here, hands behind my head. I am good. It was amazing. It was so lucky and so intense. My heart rate was like racing during this time too. So, man, it's moments like these. Like these are just 3 little stories I could share. I could show so many more, but that's why this mode is so great, because it's just curated to create these crazy moments that are once in a lifetime, kind of like Hitman things.
Right.
And it is so good. So hopefully this story has convinced some people, like, please go play this game. It is so good, and this is now the best way to play it with the World Assassination combo, where it's 3 games in 1. This new freelancer mode. It's just one of the best bangs for your buck in all of gaming. So please go check out Hitman. It's so good.
That sounds so awesome, because like you said, like I feel like in the original base game, if I don't know, shoot the wrong target, like I'm just reloading that save and then just trying to do it like as clean as possible. But like you lose out on these magical moments that you just described. And on paper, like a roguelike Hitman experience, I'm like, that just sounds bizarre. How does that work? But everything that you explained, it's just I feel like that fits that genre so well and that type of game so well, to just have these, like you said, like once like a very what's the best way to say it? Like a one, like no one's gonna have the same experience as you, like kind of like tackling these missions and going after targets that aren't the same target every time. Like I think that is really special. Question for you though, and you might not know this, but because like through PlayStation Plus, I believe I got like Hitman 2 or something on there. Do I just like not have that anymore, or did that just get replaced by like the World of Assassination or something? Or
I mean, I think they probably took it off the store, so you can't purchase it now, but since you own it, you can definitely still like just download that and play that, I would imagine.
It didn't just get taken off or something by the...
Yeah, and then there might be a situation where if you then buy World of Assassination, like you might get it at a discounted price because you own part of it.
Right.
I know that was a thing when I was doing some upgrading stuff, when I like got Hitman 3, but then I wanted to get the whole trilogy thing, but I already had Hitman 2, so it was like less costly or something like that. So yeah, there might be something weird going on there, but the way I see it is like, okay, you already own Hitman 2, maybe you don't own the DLC, but like you just got to buy this one thing now, and then you're getting 2 other games along with Hitman 2 and all the DLC. So it just seems like I don't know, it's one of those like no-brainer kind of situations.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Plus it's on Game Pass right now too, as I said. So if anyone's over there on that platform, I assume PC as well. I've been playing it on console, but yeah, that's like, just play that, you'll get hooked. But it is one of those things where it took me a while to understand what Hitman was doing. You know, you feel like if you play through each level in like a linear way, you like go through each level once and get to the end, like you'd be like, okay, that was a cool time, but like that's not how the game is designed. Like you should be playing through these levels, you know, 20 times, 30 times, 100 times. Yeah. And like once you've done it a few times for each one, you'll be like, oh, I get it now. And I want to play this level over and over again, get all these challenges, learn everything I can about it. And then, yeah, like I said, once you've done that, now Freelancer throws just a massive wrench in things where everything you've learned, you know a lot of the ins and outs of the levels, but now the targets can be absolutely anywhere. So that adds just a whole other wrinkle into it. That's just amazing.
That's awesome, because yeah, I really like the Hitman franchise. I haven't played all of them. I played Blood Money. The first one I played was Hitman Codename 47, which I don't know if that's... I think the first one was Hitman Contracts or something like that. It was just very like generic name. But Hitman Codename 47, I think that was the first one that was kind of like story oriented. Like you go level by level and you like follow the story of this Hitman.
I want to go back and play those ones, because I've only played the new trilogy. So I feel like I have the new trilogy, you have the old trilogy, and somehow we need to find a middle ground.
Invite me on that retro, because I am down. I need an excuse to jump back into those
after
old ones.
Arcane. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. I don't want to bite off more than I can chew.
I know.
I feel like there's been portions of Arcane, especially going through arcs. I'm like, what did I volunteer for? But no, I love the Hitman franchise. I feel like that really was like one of the first things that really set me off on this path of just loving stealth games and just really like perfecting these runs of going through and just having it as clean as possible. The one I've played the most is Hitman Absolution, which again, that is the other one that's a lot more story oriented. But that one, it did introduce this like you have the base level, which like as you go through it like it wouldn't be like you choose like a time trial or something, but I think it would just be like available. So if you just like happen to beat the mission without like suit only, for example, like you would just get bonuses by the end, and then it would just add to your score. It'd probably like compare it with your other like friends on Steam. That I had it on Steam, so it was something like that. But there was also... I should have looked into it, because I'm curious what it is now, but it's something kind of what you're describing. It's not like a roguelike whatever, but like you would go into these same missions and the target would be someone random, and like it would kind of be different each time. So maybe that's where they got like their first little inklings for this style, and this is like a full out system on that idea, because I do remember going through a few of them and it's like, oh, it's kind of cool that my target isn't in the same location that I was expecting him to be. Like maybe it's the chef or something, and now I have to find a way to get him out of this crowded area. There's
been things kind of like that in the trilogy already. Like there was elusive targets, which were like these limited things where it's like, okay, in the month of March, there's this guy who's shown up in Paris, and you can take him out in this period of time. So I think this is like just a better way of doing that, because now there's not a limitation of like, okay, I did the elusive target this month, now I'm just kind of waiting for the next one, just so you can just keep doing runs over and over again. And then they've also had like, there's not a map creator, but like people can go in and like pick a target on a level and add certain objectives you have to do and stuff like that. So there is elements to it as well, which is why I'm saying like the base game already had a ton of different ways to engage with these levels beyond just like the regular targets and those mission objectives and things like that. But yeah, like this is just for me a better way to engage with that kind of content. I did some of that stuff, but I kind of just prefer what the base levels were rather than doing some of those kinds of things. But yeah, now this is like just the way I'll be playing this game for the foreseeable future. And I'm also kind of bought into, because like I've spent all my time on the PlayStation version of like unlocking upgrades for all those levels, and then I was like, hey, I don't want to do like the load time thing. I just want to play on Series X with the with the Game Pass and stuff. So like on Freelancer, and I've upgraded all my stuff here, so that my save is split between two console things. So I think I'm less incentivized now on the Xbox version to go back and play the standard levels, because I won't have anything unlocked. But
right.
I wanted to mention this too. The cool part of progression with this is obviously getting better, getting credits that you can use to buy certain weapons and stuff. But you also have a safe house, and you start in like the layer, like the basement underneath. And as you're going through and unlocking levels, you unlock different rooms, so you can unlock like the wardrobe, so you can change your outfit. You unlock like a bathroom, which I don't think it does anything. It's just like cosmetic. But then you eventually unlock like the staircase to just go upstairs, and you have like this beautiful mansion in like this remote area in the forest. You can eventually unlock to go outside. You get a garage, and a lot of this stuff is mostly just cosmetic, but there is other mini games or things you can do there. And it's just, to me, it's like a really nice secondary or even primary reward system for doing this mode on top of it, where you're getting to explore this cool place and upgrade it with different visuals and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of incentive to go in and check out Freelancer mode.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I can't wait to eventually get my hands on that full copy and jump in the freelance there. Because the last thing I'll touch upon there is I feel like, as I already mentioned, I'm just going like that silent assassin route. But in Hitman Absolution, they probably had it in some other games too. But the difficulty setting, there would be like 4 difficulties if I remember it correctly. But amongst those 4, it's split into like 2 categories. One is like the professional mode, so that's like the higher 2 difficulties, so you could do like the second hardest but on professional mode, and it kind of like minimizes the HUD. Like you don't really have like a focus bar like you would normally. Like if I'm trying to get headshots or something, it like slows down time. You don't really get that. Or maybe it's like second hardest difficulty, it probably doesn't like replenish. Like you probably just have the 1 bar. But I like, because I just played that game so many times and trying to get like my own end game content out of it. You know, I didn't have Freelancer back in the Hitman Absolution days, but like I would go through those levels, and on the hardest difficulty, it like just disabled checkpoints. So that would be like the only time on my playthroughs where it's like, oh fuck, like that guy heard me. I'm not just reloading here, because you can't. Like I can't reload the checkpoint. So I'm like, okay, I have to like think on my toes right now, and like what can I do to get out of this situation? It's like kind of what you just described, like when that lady came up to you and you just threw a club at her. Yeah. like those special moments, I think for myself, like I'm kind of hurting my own experience in that regard, because I'm just like, oh no, it's got to be perfect. I got to min-max everything. It's got to be clean to the T. I'm the perfect assassin. In reality, I'm not, because how many times am I reloading these saves, right? So I think that freelancer mode, again, like I just think that's all positive. What a great idea, and like just something that's just builds upon that replayability of the game, and just gets like, because like technically World of Assassinations, like it's incorporating that first Hitman game, which came out years ago, and like they're getting new players that have never even experienced that, like back into it and experiencing that. So huge credit to IO Interactive, I believe. That's
you got it.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of that, let's talk about them a little bit more too, because they just announced last week that they are developing an online focused fantasy fantasy RPG is one of the things they're doing. So I think with freelancer mode they might be done with like new content. Like maybe they'll add some new cosmetics here or there, but like I don't think they're doing any more maps for Hitman at this point. They had Ambrose Island, which was the one DLC map for Hitman 3 that we talked about last summer. I was playing a bunch of that. But yeah, I don't think they're going to be doing any more maps. I would love to be wrong on that because I would just take new maps for this thing with the freelancer mode for the rest of my life, and I'd be happy if that was IO Interactive's, just career. But like, I understand that's not.
It's like a Mario Kart situation. They just have like waves of DLC.
I'm sure they could make a good amount of money, but maybe not to for the however many hundred people they have at their studio. So. Anyway, they've announced this, and they're buffing up the team, getting a bunch of new hires and stuff to work on this thing. We also know that the studio is making the James Bond game, right? They're making 007 game. So I guess when you saw this kind of online RPG thing, where do you think that fits in with 007? Because I kind of thought, well, that was probably the next thing. But what do you think is going to come first from the studio in terms of like release dates?
Yeah, I like almost forgot about the 007 thing just because
it's been like very quiet since the announcement.
Yeah, there's been no murmurs about it or anything like that. I don't know. I feel like I'm curious if this is like some sort of middle thing where like they had the idea for the 007 and then it just kind of morphed into like this spy open world thing, which like kind of is, I don't know, taken substance from both of those guys here. When I saw this in the show notes earlier, I didn't see the related word there, so I thought like the Hitman news was they're making a Hitman open world thing. I'm like, okay, hold up, Dylan's gotta have to explain this to me. I don't know how this works.
Honestly, like an assassination stealth game, but just fantasy would be so cool. Where you're like poisoning the wine of the king.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I would be so down for that. I don't think that's what this is, but that would be cool.
Don't tempt me, Frodo. I want that.
And it's just also Agent 47 for some reason. He's just like, looks a bit gruff. He's wearing like a tunic, but it's like still him.
It's tough to picture that guy like with hair at all, like whether it's a beard or hair on the top. So
the barcode on the back of his head.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like this would. Something in me is telling me that this would be first. I feel like the 007 thing might be. It doesn't have to go like hand in hand with a movie or something, but in my mind, I just feel like that fits better. There's been many properties in the past that haven't done that. Like I feel like Hogwarts is kind of one of those situations where like it's not like they tied that in with even what even was it called?
Beasts was Fantastic like over Beasts, a year ago at this point.
Yeah. So I don't know. Not a lot of powerful backing for that reason, but just something in me feels like we'll be getting this one before the 007 stuff.
Yeah, I kind of getting that vibe too, which is weird because the 007 thing was announced like pretty quickly after Hitman 3 released, I think, or even maybe pre-release. So that was already 2 years ago now. Of course, they could have been developing this thing for a lot longer, but it was kind of weird that they just kind of came out and said this with like not even a screenshot, just like essentially concept art that maybe isn't even concept art. It's just like generic fantasy image is all they posted with like a little bit of info. I think probably part of this was they wanted to get the word out so they can start hiring a bunch of people. I think that is kind of what it is. I like the transparency that they announced, hey, we're doing a 007 thing, we're doing this fantasy thing. Those might not be for years yet, but that we kind of know what they're working on, and that's probably a full workload at this point. 2 games, plus maybe some more Hitman support, if they're still doing any maps or anything like that, or even just a little bit of new content here or there for it. So I feel like they're pretty busy. I guess maybe my one point for where 007 makes a bit more sense is I feel like they really could take what the bones of Hitman is, even that same engine and stuff like that, and convert that over to 007, obviously the gunplay and whatnot. One of the things that when we first got that announcement of 007 was, for me, is like, man, as I mentioned previously, Hitman is not a good action game. Like, if you get into those situations, you're probably just going to die a lot of the time, and that's because your character is very slow. The gunplay, like, isn't amazing. It's like intentional, right? Like they're trying to make you nerf so you can't just go around and rampage through these levels and like destroy everything. It's just not what it is. You're supposed to be limited. So I guess that's where I have so much faith in this developer. Their level design is so good. Like their storytelling, maybe not necessarily the main plot, but just like the actual little stories going on, the world building details and stuff like that. And just like the variety that they come up with, I think like they're going to do a great job with 007. But I guess it would be easier for me to see the jump from Hitman to 007 than it is to go from Hitman to this RPG, which is online. Like Hitman 3 or World of Assassination, I got to get this straight now, is an online like always game. You have to be online for this thing to work properly, which sucks because it is a single player game. There is leaderboards and stuff, but it doesn't make sense. But it seems like for this fantasy RPG that it is an online thing where you're interacting with other people in an open world situation, like whether it's an MMO sort of thing or just like a co-op experience. It seems like the online element here is kind of the focus and probably what they're looking for when they're getting new people on the team is people who have experience with like multiplayer netcode and things like this. So also, I would imagine, once again, that the 007 thing, it might unfortunately have that annoying always online thing, but it's probably a single player experience. So I guess for those variety of reasons, 007 makes a bit more sense for me. But yeah, I mean, that could be a thing too, or like maybe the studio like that gave them the rights to this does want it to somehow connect or be close to a movie, even closer than just what it would be now, or like they released in a year or two. I don't know when another 007. I think we're just waiting to hear who the next Bond is going to be before anything. Really happens,
so it
right?
feels like a long time away.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like stuff can move fast.
Movie turnaround times is usually quite a bit quicker than AAA game development at this point in terms of development time. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on this. I'm very curious to see what they do next. Selfishly, of course, I do want them, just making Hitman for the rest of their lives. But I am curious to see what they do because even before this Hitman trilogy, when I've gotten in, like to your point, like they've been making Hitman for a long time. Like it wasn't always the same structure. But even like a lot of those similarities, a lot of things you're talking about are pretty much like the difficulty, the way that scales, and the suit-only silent assassin. Like in terms of those kind of design ethos, like they've been doing that for whatever decades now at this point. So I think it is good for them to get some fresh eyes and just do something new. I think it'll be good for the studio. So there you go. That's the IO interactive sequence. Talking more about the games we've been playing. How about I've been talking a lot here, so I'll throw over to you and tell me what's going on in Warhammer.
Forgot we were still on that segment. We were going a long time there.
I know, it's one of those
which was awesome.
mixed match episodes, but it's good.
It's all good. Yeah, no, I loved it. And so yeah, I already talked about Dishonored. More to come on our retro there. But yes, of course, my in-between game is Warhammer for sure, especially just like going through these arcane titles. Lots of fun, but like I feel like once I roll credits, it's like, all right, let's jump back into my Warhammer campaign, see what's going on here.
That's me with Hitman right now, for sure.
Yeah, it's good to have those little fallback games. I mean, yeah, if you've listened to Sidequest, if you know me, I love my Warhammer. Maybe I'll just talk about the Warhammer news.
It was Game of the Year last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's deservedly so. The number one like game mode in it is the Immortal Empires campaign, which if you just own Warhammer 3, it's just the base game. It's called Realm of Chaos. And then if you owned, the big thing was if you owned all 3 titles, you could get access to the Immortal Empires campaign, which means it combines all 3 games. You get this ginormous map. And the big deal there is that it's basically just a sandbox, like build your empire, take over the world if you want, get trade if you want, just screw absolutely everybody over if you want. Whereas like the other Realm of Chaos campaign, like you have to go into the Realm of Chaos and you're always like going to your next objective. There was a petition which I signed for, which it was I don't know who started or anything. It was probably on Reddit or whatnot, but it was basically saying that the barrier to entry was way too high for the Immortal Empires because like each one of these games is $79, even though Warhammer 1 came out very, very long time ago. Like that, like if I'm telling my friends, if I'm telling you that like this is such a fantastic experience, like greatest strategy experience in my life, but you have to own all 3 of these games. And if you want to go even crazier than that, you have all the DLCs from all the different games and whatnot.
Yeah.
So like I totally get that.
They should copy IO and they should do the same thing.
And well, you know, I signed that petition, and sure enough, Creative Assembly, they made the announcement that they have Immortal Empires unlocked. So what that means is if you just own Warhammer 3, which I believe it's still on Games Pass, which is crazy. So if you have Games Pass, you can go on there. Maybe Dylan's gonna double check that.
I'll check.
But yeah, if you just own Warhammer 3, not any of the other titles, you can play now Immortal Empires, which is so fantastic. The only like caveat there is that you only can play the races from Warhammer 3, which I think is completely fair. But still, like you get access to this, like the true Warhammer experience, in my opinion, is the combined map where you get it's like over 275 different factions, like starting. It's just it's mind-boggling. So yeah, so that was, I think, just this last month they released that they have Immortal Empires unlocked. which again, like it doesn't really affect me too much because I have still on Games Pass. Thank you, Dylan Musk. Quick keyboard type in there. So yeah, like it doesn't really affect me too much, but it just makes me so happy because now I like it's when I'm telling my friends about this, it's not just like wait for a Steam sale when you can eventually get all 3 games and experience this. It's like no, if you have access to Games Pass, like you can go in there and you can play this fantastic, in my opinion, like the greatest strategy experience in the world. So just again, it makes me so happy because now potentially just more players will get involved in here because like I started playing Warhammer during COVID time. It was one of those things where like the Total War franchise, it's kind of intimidating and daunting to get into it just because there's so many systems that you have to learn just on the campaign map, and then like let alone like the actual like strategy of like controlling your units and like knowing that you have to have spearmen that can like watch your flanks in case they have like cavalry charges coming around like that's something that just never would have crossed my mind. I grew up on RTSs where you just have like your 30 units. That's usually like your cap that you can kind of control at once, and you just send them into like battle or whatnot. But like this was a lot more in depth to me, and I took those hours to get into it, and then like I didn't even have all the game. Well, the third one came out just last year, but I didn't own the first game for a good long while because I was just trying to learn the systems of the second game, and like the second game, I think it's the same thing with the third game. Like I think the base campaign is okay, but it's really like that's not why you're playing that game. It is for the grand sandbox where you just have all these different factions and races from the first game versus the third game, and they all just come together. So that's really really cool that Creative Assembly did that.
And sorry, is that like right now? They did.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I signed that petition whenever it was, probably like in December or whatnot, and then it was like on YouTube.
That's
they
pretty
just
good.
had this
Quick
thing.
turnaround.
Yeah, Immortal Empires unlocked, and I was just like, oh my god, like is this real? This is so crazy. So
I like that name too. Unlocked is a good like little clip for that.
Absolutely. So yeah, and then that just got me jazzed. So I jumped back into my own campaign. In my early days, it's funny, we were just talking about save scumming. I was very much a save scummer where it's like a turn-based strategy game. So as you end your turn, all of a sudden like 3 armies just come out of nowhere. It's like, oh my god, no, okay, I'm not prepared for this. Load like two turns ago or something, and then kind of build up my defenses that way. Luckily, you know, I'm long since or I'm long past that moment of like really just trying to it's very goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, how Hitman, like you just kind of roll with the punches. Like, okay, no, this person heard me, I just have to roll with it, and let's see if I can get out of it. That's really how I've been playing my campaigns as of late. I was playing my first very hard campaign on Warhammer 3. I used to play very hard like all the time on Warhammer 2, but just like with the different map and the different
factions. Is that the highest difficulty?
They have legendary mode, which is like that's bonkers to me.
That's like Fire Emblem maddening. Like, no,
yeah, exactly.
I'm not doing that.
And with that game, they have 2 difficulty settings. They have the campaign difficulty level, which I was playing on very hard, and then it goes all the way up to legendary. And then they have battle difficulty, so that's where you're actually like on the battle. And what it does is just kind of add modifiers to your units. So like the leadership level, which is basically what determines your characters from like sticking in the fight. If their leadership gets too low, they just rout and they bounce. They abandon you. So like you get like, I don't know, it's like -4 or something on all your units to just balance it that way. So you have to like really lean into more tactics side of it, or like maybe their melee attack is a lot less. So like just base units, they'll be hitting a lot less. So yeah, like what I usually play on was when I first started the game, it was hard and hard. So hard campaign, hard battle difficulty, and then what I like to play is very hard campaign, and then just hard battle difficulty. The highest battle difficulty you can get is very hard, and in my opinion, it's just not fun because you just have like a really strong
have to like
unit.
micro too much and stuff like that. Is that the problem with it? Just
it's yes, absolutely. Like you'll really have to like, because you just want your units to get hit the least amount because of these like. They're basically cheats. They're just like battle modifiers on your units. So it could make like a tier 3 unit for me basically on par with like a tier 1 unit for the AI because of the modifiers. And in my opinion, that's just not really cool. It's like, especially thematically, like if I have this really epic like Phoenix Guard, like he shouldn't be losing to like a peasant villager, right? Like that in my opinion, like it's, you know, it's a single player game.
It's not like the difficulty makes it so you have to play more strategically. It just makes it so you, I don't know, need to have the right resources and team
Yeah.
comp before you go into a fight. In the
No,
first place.
exactly. And the way that I treat that game is I feel that like the game should be more enjoyable on a harder difficulty, in my opinion, just because I don't know, if it's too easy, it's just a cakewalk, it gets boring. But like the game, and there is a lot of factions that have this where they have I don't know, they just have really powerful effects to like coincide with the higher difficulties. And unfortunately, like going from Warhammer 2 to Warhammer 3, my favorite race, the Dark Elves, they got like a little mini rework, which I'm really not a fan of, because it just kind of like it makes it so like you can't really succeed on a harder difficulty. Like the bigger of an empire you get, the more like negative effects you get on you, which is just kind of counterintuitive in my opinion. So like for me to play my favorite faction, I kind of just have to play on a lower difficulty to at least, I don't know, play the same way that I need to. You can make the argument, it's like, well, you got to just change your strategy, but it's just it kind of loses the fun effect on it, in my own opinion. So yeah,
so that's like just a Dark Elf thing where you like can't build your kingdom beyond like say a certain size, or else it becomes too hard to manage. That's like a thing in Civ where it's like the more people you have, the more happiness you need to generate to like make sure you're going good. But like that's really the only thing. Other than that, it's like you're gravy as long as you can keep the happiness up. But that's too bad.
Yeah, no, and like I feel like Civ and Warhammer, like they are very similar in that sense, where like public order and control is something that you really have to manage, because if you have low public order control, like you're just gonna get rebellions all the time. And the thing with the Dark Elves, like they're evil, so people in their villages are usually not happy. Your main economy is based around like something that basically takes down your control and your public order. And like in Warhammer 2, it was something that's kind of easy to manage, because like you would basically just flood like certain provinces with these things that just boost your economy. But now it's like every province, like even if a certain province doesn't have any of those things that like boost your economy, it's still getting the negative effects because it's like a nationwide factor, which it doesn't make sense in my opinion. And they introduce these little bonuses that you get, but like only one province can get it in a time. So in my opinion, it feels like you really have to micro it so much more. Like you have to like, before I end the turn, I have to go through to each province to make sure that I actually have these like diktats that they're called to like it is enabled, and they like refresh every 5 turns. Yeah, it's like DIK.
Okay.
TAK or something
like that. Not a tattoo on your penis.
No, no, not diktat.
Gotta make sure every province has
I didn't even hear it until you said it there. Yeah. It's not a dick tattoo or anything like that. But and it's one of those things where I feel like they introduce
these Dark Elves are freaky, man. Like,
they are freaky. They're wild people. They're fun to play, at least in Warhammer 2, in my opinion. But it just seemed like they introduced this system to kind of like, as if it's like a band-aid for this like really shitty system that they introduced. So I'm really hoping they rework it, because as I've said, like they are my favorite race. They're really fun to play. Their combat is really fun. Like they hit really hard, but everyone's kind of a glass canyon. So like you really have to like get your flanking out and like know when to pull out your like melee units. And that aspect, like I just played them so much in Warhammer 2, and the magical thing about Warhammer is that there's so many different factions and races that play so differently. So like, yeah, I love them, but I hate the system. So therefore it makes me like play some other factions. And because I just don't know them, like I'm playing on a lower difficulty. And as I've said before, I feel like I've had the most fun on those really hard difficulties where like every turn really matters and you're on like a knife's edge. Okay, I'm doing pretty well, but if I lose this battle, like I'm fucked. Like these people are just gonna just stroll through my main gates and just take over like the inner guts of my kingdom. Yeah. And that's kind of where I was in my last campaign. I was on very hard. I was doing really well. And then I like won a battle, but it was very like it was like a knife's edge. Like I lost so many units, and then sure enough, because I'm on very hard, the AI just like fields so many armies. It's like so quickly, and I didn't like lose the campaign or anything, but it's just my kingdom's looking bad. Like I lost like my main army. There's like 3 stacks. They're called stacks, but that's essentially just the army on like the campaign map. It's probably similar to how Civ works. But yeah, like they're just coming to my border, and it's one of those things where it's like I probably could go back on an older save or whatnot, but that's not who I am anymore. I'm really living with these decisions, and I probably will go back to that save to just see how it kind of plays out and see if I can really salvage it, because I feel like that's also been some of the most fun I've had on campaigns is where like my money is basically in the red. Like I have like 0 treasury and like maybe like 1 income, and it's all based on like winning these next battles. Otherwise, like my kingdom's just destroyed, and really just bringing it back up and then seeing it thrive. So yeah, I was playing a lot of that over the weekend, and unfortunately, like I spent a lot of hours like boosting up my kingdom, but I just kind of got taken out there, and might take a little break from it, go back into Dishonored 2 or whatnot. But still, it's mostly positive from the Warhammer front for me, for sure. And
Nice.
with Immortal Empires, as I was stating, they are technically still in beta because it came out just in last August. I'm gonna keep my eyes and ears out for those announcements, like when they're ramping up to like the actual full release, because I think we're overdue.
Who's the publisher on that guy again?
Creative Assembly, and what is it? It's not Paradox. Paradox is the other strategy games. I think it is just Creative.
Sega, I guess.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think like where you would see like an announcement for that.
Because I was trying to think back to Warhammer 2's like DLC cycle, and like I wasn't playing it at launch. I kind of got into the game late, but when I was reading into Reddit about just people speculating like when oh my gosh, what Warhammer 2 like DLC cycle. Actually, I mean my own words too there, because there actually was already a Warhammer 3 DLC, and it was so quiet I completely forgot about it because it came in.
Was that the thing in the summer? Like
it coincided with the release of Immortal Empires, so it came out at like the exact same time. And in my mind, I'm just like, oh my god, Immortal Empires, this is amazing. It was just like some new chaos factions, which they're not really my favorite, so I stayed away from that one. But there's some big like heavy like rumors of like what people were already speculating was going to be the next DLC, and it seems like, okay, stay tuned, because it seems like this is really the way they're going. And I would imagine, I don't know, within like I would say like within this month, or even like a little bit more, I think we'll definitely get a solid confirmation from them what the DLC is. And my hopes and what I think it could be is Thanquil, which he's a Skaven legendary lord. He's a really big character in the novels as well. He's like a big fan favorite because he like embodies what the Skaven are. If you didn't know, the Skaven are like these rat men who they're hilarious because like they're basically very like narcissistic. Like that's like their deep trait.
Classic rat man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
always
like
out for themselves. How do you spell Thanquil?
Thanquol, I believe. And yeah, he's a reoccurring character in a series of novels. I went through like 5 of them, and he popped in I think 3 or 4 of them. So
nice.
yeah, he's a reoccurring character, and he just totally embodies the Skaven traits of like every battle that they win is his, it's his doing, and every battle that they lose is not his doing, it's other people. And it's just they're really funny characters. They're pure evil though, for sure. Like they just want like because they just think they're the master race. They think everyone should just die and serve them or whatnot. But he's a fan favorite for sure, especially people amongst the fantasy novel route. And then the other one is Nagash, who I also have that. He's like the original necromancer, and he's got a lot of great lore and backstories to him. And yeah, it's all positive and exciting stuff, because we got Immortal Empires. It is still in beta, but they keep having their little patch fixes and whatnot, and like moving like certain characters around on like the starting locations of the map, because I feel like definitely on the first release, because there was so many factions, like it was very imbalanced. There was certain people who weren't near like any other faction, so they could just like steamroll against these like really basic AI characters, and then some are just like absolutely like condensed, where they have like 8 legendary lords around them. And legendary lords, that's just like a playable lord, so like they obviously have a lot more powerful faction effects than just like a NPC race or something like that. So yeah, I'm kind of just ranting on and off about my campaign there. But the big news was that Immortal Empires is unlocked. And if you're listening to this, if you have Game Pass, I highly recommend checking out the game. And it is one that, it takes it is a learning curve to get into it, but I think it's so satisfying, like once you actually get past that point and can really just shrug your way through the campaign.
We should do like a beginner's guide or something like that.
We should.
Or we just do a podcast where you go through and like here's the best like race to start with. Here's like the first campaign you should do, and let's put that on the calendar. When we have an empty week on Sidequest, we'll do that, and I'll jump in and check it out, and then you can help me.
I'd love to. Yeah, I love showcasing any Warhammer factions or whatnot.
Sounds good. Let's take our next break. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Just one more game that I wanted to talk about here is Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. This just came out about a week ago on Nintendo Switch. It is a remake remaster of the game Return to Dreamland from the Wii, I believe is when this game came out. So I've been playing this. Last year, Kirklin, me and you did a review for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And we both had a lot of fun playing that in co-op. So yeah, this is the latest Kirby game. For a remake remaster, it is full price. You gotta drop down that $80 for it. I think it does have some additional content, though I never played the original, so I can't really comment on what that was. But this is more of that classic 2D platforming Kirby. Obviously, Forgotten Land was the first time it really went 3D in that big way. But yeah, me and Muds have been playing through this thing. We're on the third world right now, I think. So we've played a good few hours there, having a lot of fun with it. To me, it's very similar to the 2D Kirby games I've played in the past, where Forgotten Land had fewer copy abilities, but each one had like more moveset to it, different moves you could do, and then the upgrades, right, the different levels to it. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is like, I think there probably is still some ways you can upgrade it stuff, but there's just so many copy abilities, just dozens, I assume, by the end of this game. Like each level's introducing like 3 to 4 new ones, and you just get all sorts of weird ones. Like there's like a mech Kirby mode where you can like hover with a jetpack and like shoot lasers. There's like sand mode, and then the classic ones like tornado and shock and all that good stuff. So that part of it is really fun as well. This is specifically like intended as a co-op game, so you can have up to 4 players. I think it's only local, unfortunately, so no online co-op. But then the co-op people, they can also play as Kirby, which is nice because that was not an option in Forgotten Land. Mm-hmm. You had to play as Bandana Waddle Dee, but in this game you can choose to play as Kirby as well if you want. If you're a second player, you can also play as Bandana Waddle Dee again with his spears and his moveset, Meta Knight and his sword kind of moveset, and then King Dedede with his hammer based moveset. And those are all those characters are really fun to play as well. Unfortunately, if you're player 1, you can't switch to other characters. Like I think for certain challenge rooms and stuff, you would think like you would need Kirby's abilities, but I feel like you can at least get through all the levels without that. So it is kind of weird that you have to like play as Kirby at all times, because I kind of wanted to cruise around and check out some of these other characters, but Muds really likes Bandana Waddle Dee, so that's kind of how it went. But I mean, Kirby's moveset is obviously the most in-depth anyway. But yeah, just having a really great time with it. Whatever they did on the remaster here, like it looks great. The art style is really good. Like the game really pops visually. Kirby's music is always very fantastic, so that's great as well. And then it seems like this game has a lot going for it. Like they added an epilogue kind of chapter to the game, so I think you have to beat the main game, and then there's like this new content thing where you play as some other 5th character who has like this magic-based moveset, so I'm curious to check that out. And then there's just a ton of challenge rooms. There's a ton of mini games as well. Like this is almost like a Kirby, like it's like a Mario Party. It's like a Kirby party just jammed inside this game. There's a ton of random side stuff. I've done a couple of them and they're pretty cool, but sometime when I have 4 people or 3 people over, do some 4-player mini games, that would be pretty fun to check out as well. But yeah, it just plays really great. It's really fun. And I don't know if I have too much more to say that. I think it's probably hard for some people to justify the cost of this thing. Me and Muds went halfers on it, so it made it a bit more justifiable. And I can't really comment on how well it does in terms of if you have that Wii version or played that, if this is like a version that you need to check out for it. But as like the guy who just really likes Kirby's gameplay, and like we like playing the co-op levels of it, I'm really enjoying it. I think you and Shay would have a good time with it as well. It is a bit expensive for what it is, but I think you guys would have a good time going through this. I know she's obviously a big Kirby head as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And she's taking player 1 every time we're playing Kirby games, because that's her character. So it's nice to hear that options. I can. Yeah, exactly. That was my biggest complaint about the second one. I was just stuck with Bandana Waddle Dee.
Yeah,
I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah, like
it's a mouthful.
Yeah, great character and stuff, but it just, I don't know. I can only throw so many spears. I wanted to slurp up some enemies and take their abilities.
It's cool. I didn't look up the release date of this thing originally, but one thing I love about Smash is how authentic the movesets are for the characters. Like if you look at Mario's moveset, like every single animation he does in Smash is like pulled directly from some Mario game, right? And they turn it into a Smash move. And so I'm guessing this game came out before Super Smash Bros. Brawl did on the Wii. If not, it would have been like, I guess, taking inspiration from that. But just looking at the movesets of this, like so much of Meta Knight's moveset is like what he does in Smash, and King Dedede, a lot of his moves, like the smashes and stuff, are like pulled directly from Smash. So it's cool for me to, like, as a huge Smash Bros. Fan, to go back and say like, oh, that's where they pulled a lot of these movesets from. Would have been from this game back in the day, where I'm sure it had that co-op and had these characters in there. So that element of it is really cool as well. But yeah, there's some goofy stuff you can do. Like you can put on masks that are both like a bit cute because they're Kirby, but they're also kind of weird and creepy to like put this tree mask over top of Kirby's or like Meta Knight's face. It's like kind of strange in that way. So I feel like you got to have a bit of weirdness when it comes to Kirby stuff. Like even Mouthful mode was a very weird addition that was obviously very fun, but it was like, well, I wonder why they chose to go down this route. But Kirby's always got a little bit of quirkiness to it. So yeah, shout out to this game. I had a lot of fun with it. I think we're going to play through the whole thing for sure. Nice. And then, yeah, like I was doing one of the challenge modes, which is like you have sword mode, and you have to get like the gold medal, you have to go through like these bonus rooms, and like you have to do it in like a time trial way. You have to do it really quick. And it took me like probably a good 20 attempts to get the gold on this thing. Like it really was a challenge mode, which, you know, for sometimes Kirby and like Yoshi games can be a bit too easy. But like I like that they're adding in the difficulty through these challenge modes. That seems like, okay, each power has one challenge mode room that's like really going to make you know every single move that you have with that sword move. You got to use this like almost perfectly to get gold. So that's pretty cool as well for someone like me. It gives me a little something more difficult to do after we've beaten some of these main levels and unlocked some of these things.
Totally.
Yeah. There you go. There's Kirby, and I think that's all the games that we've been playing that we wanted to talk about. So with that, let's move into some of the news here. Kirklin, you want to bring up this trailer we can have in the background here for the YouTube audience? But Dead Island 2 is coming out pretty soon here. It's coming out at the end of April. They actually moved it up a week after years and years of delays. They moved the release date up by, I think, like 7 days. So it's coming out somewhere in the end of April there. We're going to have this video up for the YouTube version here. But yeah, this is, to me, like they've probably had a couple trailers, and they obviously had trailers like back in the day because this game's been announced for however many years. You can hit play, let this thing just cruise through. But yeah, this is like a nice big gameplay deep dive where it's like a good 14 minutes of gameplay footage just showing like essentially one whole level. It's not like a bunch of clips. Like it's just, here's like what 14 minutes of playing through this game is going to look like. It's going through this level. You're walking down through the whatever it was, the Malibu, whatever the fuck it is, some LA, you know, the Hollywood Hill and all
Beverly
that
Hills,
kind of stuff.
something like that.
Yeah, Beverly Hills. That's what I was looking for there. So you're kind of cruising down, looking for this evacuation point, fighting zombies on the way, and of course you stop for the side quest and all that. But yeah, this is the first time I've seen this game in a big way, at least the gameplay side of things. So what did you think of this thing? Assuming you did get a chance to watch this previously.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, absolutely.
Yeah, what did you think of the gameplay reveal here?
I honestly, I was very impressed by it. I feel like it looked very clean. I've never played Dead Island. I just assumed it was like a third person game. I didn't know it was first person or anything like that. So I was like, did they just make a really like bold switch up and just go for the first person here? But yeah, so I thought just the combat looks fun. And just overall, like I think it just looks really good. And yeah, that I feel like that's the biggest thing of just. I know I'm getting to a zombie game by like the looting aspect of it. Obviously, you're gonna be smashing zombies, so like a lot of that stuff isn't anything new. But just like I don't know, it just jumping back into this zombie infested world, it looks like a fun time. So for someone who I had absolutely zero interest in like the Dead Island franchise, I was kind of memeing on it. I'm like, wasn't this announced for like years? All those poor losers that are waiting for it. And then I see this trailer, it's like, damn, like that actually looks very impressive, and especially like the co-op aspect to it. I think this could be lots of fun and a lot of just late nights shooting up zombies and
I'm with you, man. This trailer, of course, it is gameplay, so that is a good sign. It's not some CG thing, but you always got to take it with a grain of salt in terms of how authentic this truly is to the actual gameplay experience and how the whole game is, or is this just this street looking really good? But visually, The game looks fucking amazing, and the lighting and all that. The dismemberment, we'll break that down a bit more, but like it is insane. I've never seen a game with dismemberment like to this level. But then also just like the combat and stuff, like it's looking very solid, and the enemies and the animations of them running around and whatnot. Like this game looks fantastic, and I think for me too, I just love going into like interiors and stuff in open world games, and some games really cheap out on that. You know, it's not really a lot of them. Like even think about how like often Fallout just like has this caved in building, you can't go inside of it. So I'm really curious to see how many of these like buildings you can go in. But like I think for me, I could spend 25 hours going into the different mansions in the LA hills and like just looking around, taking out zombies, seeing who's there. Like that's all I need for a game. But the fact that that's just kind of one section of the map is pretty enticing. So honestly, like, you know, I don't want to just be a total puppet to the marketing here. And I want to see, you know, hear some impressions when the game's actually out. But I think before I decide if I am going to be picking it up, but like, this gameplay trailer really sold me. Like I feel like I'm gonna pick this up because it just seems like such a good dumb fun kind of time. I think for me the biggest holdup for me is honestly just the release date. It's coming out days before Redfall, which is obviously it's kind of similar to Redfall, open world where you're fighting obviously vampires in that, zombies in this, co-op experience. I hope this game, like in some way I'm almost worried if this game is so good that I think Redfall will get like overshadowed largely by this. Right. There's already, you know,
Pretty
been
similar.
some people aren't happy with some of the stuff with Redfall anyway in terms of the always online element and other things. So I obviously am always pulling for Arcade, and I hope Redfall is does really well over there. But like this looks amazing, and unfortunately, there is other things coming out at the end of April that I'm looking forward to. Coffee Talk, it's a minor one, and then like Minecraft Legends I want to check out, but then like being days before Redfall, and then I know I'm going to be going away for most of May, so I just don't know how much time I'll have with this, but like I really want to play this. I really, really just want to get in there, hack up some zombies, you know, mute it, not even listen to the dialogue, and just cruise around and like mess up some zombies. Like this is exactly what I want from this thing, and it looks fucking outstanding. So hopefully it lives up to even if it's like half as good as what's showing here, I think I'd still have a pretty good time with it.
Yeah, especially just like the different areas they're going in the trailer. I love games when you can just like put on your own music or whatnot and just have fun.
Yeah.
This very much seems like that. And me and my dad too, like we don't play a lot of games together, but I feel like the main genre that we've really just like bonded with was like Left 4 Dead and like those type of like zombie survival. So this is totally up our alley for sure. It's one where it's just like, man, I wish I could run this on PC. It's like the lighting effects and everything. It's just, it looks so gorgeous. It's also just, I don't know, in my opinion, I think it's easier to like link up with friends on PC versus like, oh, do you got this console? Okay, let's figure out if it's cross-platform or whatnot. It's just, you know, especially you could just like boot it. And I know Discord is on like Xbox now and PlayStation, but it's just so much easier on PC, especially when you're used to that. But
I don't have like a headset that plugs into my console, so that's just inherently an annoying thing when I want to play Halo or something like that.
Yeah, when we're playing COD, I have my headphones for the game because I need to hear those footsteps, and then I have these earbuds underneath those headphones to my phone going to Discord.
I did the exact same thing, and it's like, okay, let me go get all my gear, let me get set up, let me like drop the GIF who's dropping in our GV chat, see who's playing. It's a whole process.
You need prep time for sure.
Exactly. So I mean, one of the things is the dismemberment system. They have a fun word for it. They just call it the flesh system, which I'm sure has like some acronym that I don't know what that is, but like just the animation of it, of just ripping these zombies apart, looks amazing. But then also the gameplay element of it, it's like, well, if there's a runner, just like aim for the leg, shoot its leg off, and then it'll like topple over on the ground. Or if something's holding like a weapon of some sort, try and hack one of its arms off, something like that. Or just like, you know, put a hole through its head or something like that. Like it's visceral, and it's like tied into the actual gameplay system of it. I'm sure different weapons will be really good for ripping off certain body parts and stuff like that. So that just looks amazing. I wonder if you rip all the arms off a zombie and its legs, like if it's not dead, can it like still crawl at you in some way? And
like a Nazi zombie situation.
Yeah, exactly.
You leave them alive so you can loot.
I
I feel like so many games, or like it's very few and far between where games have it where like, okay, if I shoot him like right in the arm where he has a weapon, like he's just gonna drop it, and then now like that villain that I'm interacting with is subdued to a sense, like you just mentioned with like the runners, if you shoot them in the leg or whatnot. And like that's another part of this game that just it surprised me, I think, seeing that, because the other zombie game that I played recently would be Dying Light, not the second one, just the first one.
Okay.
And that one is so satisfying in my opinion, of just like smashing a zombie in the head, and yeah, it just like explodes, but like it's not to the full extent where if I like shoot him in the leg or whatnot, it just like I think he slows down, and like maybe if I shoot him in the leg enough it'll explode, but then like he's just dead in that aspect, whereas like yeah, just I can't wait to just creatively kill these zombies and have fun with it.
Part of that too is like this pretty classic zombie game thing is like the customization of your weapons, and you're just, you know, making do. You know, you're having like a very janky sword with like a butane lighter on it that makes it like a fire sword and all stuff like that, which is fun. But like one of the things they showed here was like the electrified Wolverine claws. And it's like, man, I cannot wait to just roleplay as Wolverine in this world and just ripping zombies up in that way. Like that will be one of the first weapons I want to accomplish here. They obviously showed tons of different guns and stuff like that, but then also Dead Island is very much about the melee weapons, and they showed a huge variety of those in here. So that makes me pretty hopeful as well, that just the variety there. They mentioned this, they dropped this, and I wrote a quote down. There's like dozens of enemy types, and that stood out to me. Do they mean like 24, where it's like 24? Are they talking like 30, 40? 50? How many types are we talking about here?
Yeah.
I think what they're kind of doing when they say that is like, okay, there's a walker, and then there's like a walker with like riot gear, and that's like a separate type, and there's like 8 different walker types or something like that. So I'm guessing that's what they mean. But even then, it's like there's probably still a bunch. We saw a few different ones in here. Was the walkers, the runners. There's that big kind of more behemoth looking guy. I'm sure there's ones that can like spit projectiles at you and things like that. So seems like just between the weapons and enemy types, there's a lot of variety there. That just would like that if that base gameplay is good enough, and like this world is expansive and interesting enough, then like you're good to go. Like that's like really all you need there to keep you invested in this thing.
I had to pause it here because this caught my eye here. I'm like, is that the Gondor symbol right here? Is this guy representing Lord of the Rings? It looks like it looks like it is without like getting copyrighted or anything. Like they've changed it a little bit, but like I know what that is. That's the white
like
tree.
They're like,
Come on.
that's just a skull, but it's like no, that is a tree for sure.
That is the tree of Gondor right there. So credits to them. I like that.
Mm-hmm. You did pause. You paused on this guy where you have this like side quest in this where you're going up, you meet this guy in his house, and you got to like put some circuit break. You got to do like a fetch quest essentially for him.
Very zombie genre game. Quest.
Absolutely. I think the dialogue here like did absolutely nothing for me. I'm like, okay, this is not funny. This is not quirky. This is not interesting. And it's not giving me high hopes if this is like what they're showing off here is like, oh, this is like one of the stories that we really enjoyed and wanted to show off to our players here. So I don't know. Maybe there is some good. I'm sure there's probably some good quests in there or interesting characters. Once again, I don't know if that's something I really need. That's like a cherry on top kind of thing, but I feel like this could be one where I'm skipping a lot of cutscenes. So
yeah,
I had to at least be a little critical on that side. It's not really doing much for me.
Yeah, and like so many aspects of this trailer remind me of something like Dying Light, which isn't a bad thing at all because I really love that game. I never got around to the second one just because I countless games I have to get through. Every once in a while though, I'll just throw that first one in just because get that zombie kick, and I mean this could totally replace that. But I feel like something in that game as well was a lot of like those fetch quests or like little mini dialogues that you would have like a random survivor or whatnot. It's so forgettable. It's just like, and like a lot of these are like really zany characters that they're probably just, I don't know, trying to get some laughs out of, which might work for some people, but I feel like the vast majority of the time it doesn't. So yeah, when I saw this guy in the trailer, it was just like, oh yeah, here we are. This is very much like a zombie video game type character where it's just like he's so wild. Probably get some laughs from some people here, but I mean, it's not enough to deter me from the game or anything like that, because at the end of the day, it's about the gameplay and just having fun with it. And I think this trailer really, really surprised me, honestly, because I feel like the last time I was really just like not even like super against a game, but just like, okay, I know I'm not going to buy it, was I think Fallout 4. And I remember seeing that trailer and it's like, holy shit, I have to drop money for this game now because it just blew me away. And like, that's how I felt with this trailer as well. Great showcase from them.
It's one of those things where it's like, okay, this game has been in development for like a decade or whatever, and it feels like it. Actually.
Yeah.
Whereas so
good
many
point.
times we get that, where even like Suicide Squad recently finally did that big gameplay thing after this game's been in development for like 7 years, and it's like, that was what you were working on, really? It's like,
Yeah.
whereas this is totally like, man, they have been spending years and years and millions of dollars to make this thing just the most insane it can possibly be. So, yeah, I mean, potentially look forward to a review or some coverage of this, because I might pick this up. I think Taylor might be picking it up. I don't know. It doesn't sound like you're maybe day one on it yet. I'm not even either yet, but like we're both pretty interested by it now. So at the very least, I could see Taylor picking this up. He doesn't play too many new games, but like this could be one that he goes.
I think
for.
he's like a dying, or I almost said dying.
He did like the
Island.
first one.
I know he's a fan of the Dead Island.
Yeah.
Series. Only been one game, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I did play the first one too. I don't know. I think I got my Steam hours in like 8 or 9 hours. I didn't play a ton of it, but like it was a good enough time for what it was. But this definitely does feel like a level up for me. And if it's, I mean, that first game was just very janky too, like the PC port. It was like literally a PC port from the Xbox version, right? It was like a total mess. Where hopefully this is not that. It's a bit more ready to go day one sort of thing.
I remember, because I remember it was on sale, and it was one of those things where I just never got around to it. And like the gate, like I don't know, the screenshots look decent, but I remember seeing the reviews. Like if you have someone to play this with, definitely it's a fun time. But if not, just pass. And it's like okay, I'll pass on it.
Yeah, which I mean, this trailer obviously is all showing single player, so hopefully that is a focus to an extent where you can still have a good time with it. Which I think we're in a age now where everything's like an open world game where you're cruising around just screwing around. So this game's like just fits in with like today's landscape maybe a bit more than that original one did. But yeah, I love the setting too of LA. I'm really liking the look of going through these iconic LA locations, but with this grotesque like skin over it. And just this fun combat system.
It's cool to see like the different like I guess the effects that are like interacting with enemies, whether like we saw some people, we saw this individual is playing the game right now, like throw like a car battery and it like shocks them, and then like just the different ways that you can kind of get those effects off and really interact with the environment to use it as your weapon. That's always a fun aspect in these zombie like games when they incorporate them, of course.
Yeah, that's definitely seems to be a big part of it, and the interactivity with the environment, which is a good thing for sure. So okay, with that, you know what? Let's take our very last quick break here, and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. We have just two more topics, which I think will probably be pretty quick ones here. But let's go over to Counter-Strike next. So there's been some rumors. Apparently, there's been a lot of rumors lately, but then there was a more recent one that was kind of a bigger deal, maybe more reputable than these other ones. I did not even realize this was a thing that was going on. I guess I'm a little checked out of the CS community these days, but I do obviously have a lot of love for these games. But yeah, essentially there's been rumors of a Counter-Strike 2 is kind of what the name of this thing is. So Kirklin, we were talking about this yesterday where it's like, okay, well, isn't Counter-Strike Go like essentially Counter-Strike 2?
Well, it's like the third game,
like
right? Because the first one, I thought the first one was 1.6, and then I thought it was a big deal when Source came out, because it's like, oh my god, this game looks so much better than 1.6, and then like that was a really, I don't know, I thought a lot of people played that one versus 1.6, and then when CS:GO came out, I feel like that was the big, oh my god, they perfected the game now, this is going to be one that goes on forever. So yeah, CS:GO or Counter-Strike 2, I don't like that title at all. It should be like Counter-Strike 4 or something.
Well, it might even be like Counter-Strike Go 2, which even that
they
is
better
like,
call it that.
I hope they just kind of pick a new subtitle. Part of this rumor is not that the game's necessarily going to be named that. It's just like that's kind of what we're calling it for the time being.
Got Grimes with that title.
Yeah, we'll call it Counter-Strike Go 2 for now, if that makes you happier. But so it sounds like, I think the biggest part about this is that whatever this thing is, it is coming very soon. Potentially even this month is when a beta would be coming out and an announcement, which to an extent actually tracks. Like Valve is kind of quiet on things, right? Like they are not in that same, like it's weird because they are in a way a bit of a platform holder, kind of similar to Sony or an Xbox, because they are like, they own Steam, and Steam is like the main place that people play games on PC. But obviously it's not like an exclusive console of theirs. They had like some, they have the controller, and they had the Steam. I mean, they have the Steam Deck now, so that's obviously a big thing too, or it actually is a console now that they're doing. But it is weird in terms of how they announce things, like that you would not expect a Valve showcase at like E3. That's never really been what they do. So I say all that to say, yeah, like it sounds like this could be something that they just kind of come out of nowhere and drop. And I think to an extent they can kind of get away with that, considering that they do have Steam and they can just kind of float whatever they want to the top of that store. And so many millions and millions and millions of players, me and you, we wouldn't even know about it. We would not have seen an announcement. We would, because we're in on these kind of things. But like it would just drop on Steam and we would see that because it'd be on the front page for the first like month of its release or something like that, right? So, but obviously if this is a beta that they're doing first, then that might be something they're slowly rolling out, and then like maybe expect a bigger announcement, a big trailer that IGN is covering, and all this big stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of what's going on. But I think the impetus for this is they have a newer engine that they would be essentially translating what Counter-Strike is over to this new engine. Get some better, faster servers, which I know is a big thing people have wanted, especially in the COVID era when a lot of tournaments and things like that went online. There's always been online tournaments, but even more prestigious events being online. It's okay, we want better servers and stuff like that. So just in a way, I feel like this is probably going to be very much a half-step jump. It's not going to be a huge new sequel. It's pretty much going to be like what Overwatch 2 was for Overwatch, but they're probably just not going to bungle the way it's like announced. And who even know, dude? Overwatch 2 in the single player, what the fuck is going on there? Like, I still have no idea. But I think for Counter-Strike 2, it's not like, oh, we have some huge new campaign. Like, it's probably just going to be new servers. Game's going to look a bit better. There's going to be a couple new maps and like whatever. It's like branded as this new thing. But yeah, what do you think about this?
Well, I got a question to open up with. Like, when CS:GO came out, you had to buy the game, and then at one point in time, they just made it free. Would that just be the case now with CS:GO 2, or title pending?
So is CS:GO actually free now on?
It is,
on Steam.
I
believe you, but I want to fact check.
Yeah, no, definitely fact check. But I remember I had a buddy that I used to work with who was a big CS:GO player, and he said he hated it because that was the big thing where he was at in the skill bracket, like because the game was free, everybody could just make these like Smurf accounts like super easy and go in there and just pop off or whatnot if they're like global elite.
Yeah, you are right. It is free to play, and then they have like the Prime upgrade, which gives you like better matchmaking and stuff like that. You get like higher in the queue and stuff like that. And then there's other, like obviously there's microtransactions out the ass in Counter-Strike, buying keys and cases and all this stuff. But you're right. Apparently, it did go free to play at some point. I totally missed that. But even when I bought it, when it came out, it was like $15 or something.
Yeah,
like it was a very inexpensive game. In that way, but obviously Smurfs with a free-to-play game is going to be a lot more of an issue. But I guess, I would imagine that would be a jump for this thing too. Is from launch, it would be a free-to-play experience. They'd probably even just copy over that same thing, where there's a Prime where you get better matchmaking, and then probably even just copy over. Like I very much expect it to be the same thing, and that's why I don't see this as a huge, big announcement in the way like GTA 6 is this thing. It's like I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be a very small update in a way, but it will get a lot of people re-energized in the game and
for sure
restart. I mean, the competitive scene is huge. Esports for Counter-Strike is pretty big, even though esports is as an industry is kind of on the downturn right now. CS is doing well as far as I know. So I mean, I even saw recently, I think Counter-Strike Go just hit like a new player cap on Steam, like a new active player, concurrent player like peak. It just hit that like recently in the last couple months, which is insane to me that after all these years, it randomly did that. So it is in a way a bit weird that it's like, okay, if you just hit your player cap, why are you going over to like a new game? But if it's free to play and it's like, okay, pretty much the same game, but like a little bit nicer looking, better servers, it's like, why not? If they have the engine for it, they might as well do it. And I don't think they're really going to gain much, and I don't think they're going to take a huge hit either. I think it'll honestly just be like a very smooth transition, not like Overwatch 2. It'll be, I think, much smoother than that.
Which is good. I feel like the biggest thing for me from hearing this is just the game engine change, because that's something that you wouldn't just incorporate in like CS:GO. It's like, okay, we have an update, we completely changed the entire engine, and now the game just feels completely different. I do think that would like warrants a new title or something, and the fact that like if that is like they've already announced that's what is new, and like that's what warrants this like 0.5 upgrade for the game. I think that's completely like fine and understandable, because like I just said, like it would be weird if they just incorporated that in an update. I don't even know how that would work, because like you would have to like completely I don't know how games work, but
It would
you'd have
be
to like
hard to do, I think. Yeah, like
just as a like an update. Yeah. So and like
especially with all
just
the mods and stuff that exist, like they would screw us so much by doing that, and it'd make probably so many people mad with like custom maps that would no longer work and weird things like that. It would make more sense to just like, okay, we're just gonna start a new thing and like we're not taking away CS:GO. Like you can
Yeah.
still play that if you want.
No, exactly. I'm curious just how different that feels because like it through all the CS I almost said all the CS:GO games, all the CS games, like they really have like the same bones I think to them. Like it really the systems are all there from the get go, like from the very first game.
Yeah.
But just so I'm not too worried of it being like really different for kind of a competitive sense because these people have just been playing this game
Yeah.
for all these hours every single day for however many years, so like they really just know this system. I think it's gonna definitely like bring a lot new players just having like a new title on Counter-Strike. Like when CS:GO came out, like I'm not a big Counter-Strike player at all, but like even I was in there and like having fun with friends and whatnot. So I think that's a good positive because it'll just be a big spike in there. And I think when these like competitive games come out, whether it's Counter-Strike or Overwatch, in like the initial like release of it, it's such like a magical time. Like I remember playing Overwatch for the first time like with some friends. I didn't play it like right at launch because my PC didn't run it at the time, but like when I upgraded my computer and then like jumping in there and just not knowing what the game was, like not like back then you could have like 6 mercies on a team and like that like like it was just like a complete clusterfuck. But it was so fun.
I miss the Wild West of Overwatch.
Yeah, it was like that was so much fun. So I think that's a big positive too. Like that's gonna come out of this like new upgrade from C, even if it is just like a half step up or whatnot. I think that pulse will be positive in my eyes. So and just I'm curious how much of a like esports like spike it has or something, like if just a lot more people are interested in Counter-Strike because of this update. Because like when did Go come out? Do you have that number in front of you? I'm
I want to
curious.
say like 2012.
Oh my gosh, that's so long ago now.
But let me 2012, August 2012.
Holy moly, that's crazy.
I know, that's crazy. Talking about that, like I think there's an element to it where even because I was very big into CS for many. I think I have like over 700 hours in CS:GO. I've played a lot of it, and there's always been a thing in the community where a lot of people are like, "Oh, CS 1.6 was like the best CS," and or like Source, whatever it is. Like people are always going to have their favorite in that way, and I think you'll get that same thing when this new one comes out. It'll be like, "Oh, CS:GO like way better than this thing," but like ultimately like the better servers. Then the visuals and obviously the like Valve does support their esports scenes, and they're just going to shift their support over to this new game, right? Like that's where they're going to put the resources and their money, and so people are going to follow, and people will learn to love it over time. That's like the same way I am with Smash Bros. Right? Like Melee will always be my favorite now, but you ask anyone like, oh, Brawl was my favorite. Oh, I love Smash 4 for what it was. Like people are always going to have their favorites, but like they'll still migrate and check out the new one. And I think CS is so big and ubiquitous and such a big esport that I think it'll be fine, kind of no matter what they do here. And yeah, I say that because I feel like this is pretty hard for them to fuck up. And I don't feel like Valve really fucks up very often. Like they're pretty good with this kind of thing. And so I wanted to ask you too, like since CS, obviously just in the last year or two is when the Steam Deck has come out, which is their console. CS:GO does have controller support. It's always kind of more of like known as a mouse and keyboard kind of shooter. Everyone playing competitive, obviously, and ranked is going to be using mouse and keyboard. But they do have controller support, so I'm sure they would have that for the Steam Deck. They probably already do for CS:GO, but like maybe they have like a nice modified version for it. But with the Steam Deck being this portable console where there's the idea of it being that people aren't always going to be connected to the internet if they're playing on the bus or on a plane, whatever it is, they're not going to have internet access. Do you think they factor that into the decision at all with this game and think about including some sort of single player mode beyond just like fighting bots in like an offline version of the game? Do you think do they care at all about making CS? And that's like maybe a thing they market and push is like, oh, there's this, play it on the Steam Deck because you can do this single player thing. And like once again, this is giving me Overwatch 2
I was just gonna say careful
because like I can't even remember, like I think CS:GO has some sort of single player element to it, but like dude, I've played just ranked like almost exclusively in that game, so it's hard for me to say like what the other modes are. Do you think that's something at all that they care about doing?
I don't think so. I think they made it this far with like the system that they've had. They've never really ventured and like trying to do it single player or whatnot. So I really think they'll keep the systems the same, and hopefully, I mean, I don't know. Hopefully they just learn from the whole, pardon me, Overwatch fiasco of like over promising with like a single player campaign thing.
Yeah.
I also just feel like for what Counter-Strike is, well, I don't know. I was gonna say I feel like I couldn't really picture the single player aspect to it, but I mean I've played like Rainbow Six, and that's essentially like Counter-Strike single player, right? Taking out terrorists or whatnot. So I although I can see it, I feel like why waste your efforts? Like they're already making such a killing with like the microtransactions and the system that they have in place. Why go through the effort of like trying to manufacture a, I'm not going to discredit it because I haven't seen it and it's not even a real thing, but like in my opinion, I feel like it would be significantly lesser than what the multiplayer experience is. So I don't know, like maybe just a more elaborate like tutorial, but like even then, like why waste your effort?
Once again,
you
imagine
learn the
there's
game
like
in the game.
I imagine there's a decent tutorial in there. I just don't even know. I mean, it's one of those things where, of course, it has like Steam Workshop to it. So people have all sorts of single player maps in there, whether it's different firing range things so you can practice your shots for competitive. I'm sure people have made like single player kind of content that you can do. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's just something that like I've actually explored so little of what Counter-Strike offers because I just play the one mode. I just play ranked and watch tournaments, which is the same format and all that stuff. So
yeah,
I'm almost checked out of like the other features that they normally have. But very curious. We'll keep an eye on this. I mean, when this thing comes out, I don't care if it has a price point. I'll definitely be checking out the new Counter-Strike. I love this game so much, and I even played some of the older Counter-Strikes too. So yeah, a lot of love for this series. I'd be curious if they what kind of changes they make in terms of just like if they change team names and stuff like that. Like I don't know if they care about like the fact that one of the teams is just terrorists. Like I don't know, they want to change that and make that almost like more modern in a way.
Yeah.
Like
the balaclava wears.
Yeah, not like anyone's like canceled Counter-Strike because like there's terrorists and counter-terrorists. But like I don't know, I could see them like changing that to be something more interesting even. Just visually maybe you can make it for like a younger audience too by doing some of that. I don't know. It is pretty just gun heavy centric game, but anyway, just some random thoughts there. But
for sure.
Moving along to our last thing here, there's been some murmurs, something going on with Dragon Ball. I don't know anything about this, so Kirklin, can you break it down? What's going on with Dragon Ball here?
Yes, there was. I think it was. What day is it? Today is the 6th. I forget what day it was. This month there was Fanboy Clay in our Discord. Go join the GV Discord. He I didn't even see it till he posted it, but apparently there is this rumblings. Not even a rumbling. It was actually posted from the Bandai Namco Japanese Twitter account that they just released this video, and it was a really cool teaser shot because what it was like the on like the old like what do they call like the CRTs, the like the big, you know, what you got behind you right there, the old school
That's
TV.
a small one, but
okay, yeah. It was a larger size CRT
it's a thick TV.
Of just Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi gameplay. So they just showed like old gameplay of that one, and then as like the trailer went on, they had like more modern footage of again like where Goku's kind of popping off in the current timeline of Super or whatnot. He's Super Saiyan something. I don't know. I used to be a really big Dragon Ball head. I feel like I still have a lot of nostalgia for it, but I'm just not fully caught up to it. Haven't played all the recent games, so you know, you don't have to label me a Dragon Ball fan, I guess. Maybe I lose my card for that aspect. But yeah, it was a really cool announcement trailer, and it was just in Japanese. So what they said there was a new sparking begins, which is kind of funny because the direct translation, I don't know if it's a direct translation, but the Canadian version, the English version of that is Budokai. So that's what like Budokai is in Japanese, I guess, the sparking.
Interesting.
So yeah, when I first saw the tweet, I'm like, I don't remember the last sparking. What's going on here? So yeah, like if you didn't know, they released I believe 3 Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi games, which amongst the fans that's like regarded as like the S tier. Like I said, like I haven't played the recent one. I don't think it would have met that same caliber just because there's a lot of nostalgia for that old fighter. And it was just a step above all the other Dragon Ball games at that time. And not to like confuse people with the Budokai series, because I grew up playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai, and then this one is Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi, which is a completely different game.
So sorry, Tenkaichi is like the 2D fighter.
That's Budokai, just Budokai.
That's just Budokai.
So Tenkaichi is like the 3D, where you're kind of like behind like your character, third person.
And is that kind of like an open worldy thing where you're cruising around and
it's just fights? It's just fights, but it's in this like more 3D.
But it's like a single player.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember. I've only played it like the single player mode. I don't know how the 2-player would work unless it's like split screen in that aspect, because you are beside the character. That is the difference between just regular Budokai, is that it's kind of like a Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or sorry, Dragon Ball Fighter Z. That's the one that's more of an arcade fighter.
And that's like that's still like getting new characters and stuff. That new one. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think that has a pretty decent, and by pretty decent, it has a competitive scene. I don't know how decent it is.
And it looks like the last Tenkaichi game was like 2007, so it's been a while.
It's been a very long time, over 15 years, I think it is. So that's crazy to me, because Tenkaichi is one of those games where I never owned it. I only played it as a friend's house or at a friend's house and had a lot of fun with it, but that's just not the one I owned. I played the shit out of just straight Budokai, not Tenkaichi. I had a great time with it. It was really cool because it is like a kind of a 2D platformer, 2D like fighter game, but it would go through the story, so it would have like cutscenes of the story of Dragon Ball, and then you'd go to the fights, and then you'd go that way. And just again, if you're a fan of the series, I think it's just so fantastic. But the fact that they're bringing this series back, not even like a remaster, like this is going to be a new Tenkaichi game, I think that's so fantastic, because for the people like me who never owned it and just like I feel like I got a little Costco sampler size of it, and it's just like, man, this is fantastic. Like where can I buy this? It's just, well, if you have a PS2 you can, which I never owned, unfortunately. Like this is a brand new series, and it'll be obviously covering like kind of where they are in the canon, I would imagine, with like Dragon Ball Super, which again I'm not fully caught up on, but I still think this will just be such a hit, because of the fact that a lot of people just regard this as like the gold standard for Dragon Ball games. And like Dragon Ball Z's just kind of like reemerged, and not even like recently. Like I feel like it was like a decade ago. Like I remember in like high school, I just remember hearing just there was like merch or whatever. Like people were just like doing like collaborations or whatnot with like the Dragon Ball, whether it's like a skateboard brand or something. Like it reemerged in like my later years, which is great because I grew up on the series. So I'm so happy this like isn't dead, and like here we are 2023 and we're getting a brand new Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi game. Like that's crazy to me. There's no title, no release date, no release window even right now for it, but just this teaser trailer that came out. So we'll obviously wait to see some more announcements for it, but this is really, really cool news.
I was just Googling a little bit, and it seems like the older games, like those first three, just like aren't really playable on modern hardware either. It's one of those probably weird things where it's licensed stuff, so it's not like on the backwards compatible list for Xbox, and they never did like remaster or anything for like even PS3. It looks like the last one is PS2, maybe like 2007.
Yeah,
anyway.
I think so.
Whatever it is, but it seems like either way, like modern hardware not really working for these things. So it's like a good timing in that way too. And it also is cool because like so much recently we've seen when companies are looking to dig back into their back catalog of games, they are opening it up with a remaster or a remake of some sort of one of those older games. They see how that does, and then from there they decide, okay, this did really well. People want more of this, so we're gonna create a new one now. So I mean, maybe the hardcore fans want a remake remaster rather than this, but I think it's pretty cool that you're actually getting like a new game. And as you're talking about, like it could talk about, or it could go into like the new storyline. I'm sure there's been some new characters introduced since that time and all that stuff, and it will look great and all that stuff. So yeah, I feel like Dragon Ball Z kind of quietly still releasing games pretty often. Like there was like Kakarot, right, was last year, I think, and then Fighter Z was in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's still, as you're talking about, pretty modern, getting new characters and stuff like that. So it's cool, and you're getting like a variety of things too. Kakarot was like open world. You had the 2D fighter, and then you have this as well, which is something a bit different. So it's cool. It's good to see.
No, absolutely. And I just checked. So the first game was only on PS2, came out in 2005, and then they had two sequels, or Game 2 and 3, and those released on PS2 and the Wii.
Yes.
The old classic, your Wii version, which probably had a lot
not
of different
getting the deluxe
systems,
treatment
I would
like
imagine.
Kirby did on the Switch. They left that one on the Wii.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I'm very intrigued by this one. I'm gonna be keeping a close eye on it.
Nice.
Kakarot is one of those I've only heard good things, and no real excuse on why I haven't gotten to it. I really
so many
want
games.
to.
So it's Total War. That's the
So
reason.
many.
Let's be real. That's the reason. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, Kirkland. This was a very fun episode. I thought it was gonna be short, but then we ended up talking about Hitman and Total War for an hour in total. So that just happens sometimes. But this is a good, spicy episode. We will see it on the feed soon with the Arx Fatalis retrospective. Next week I'll be back with Taylor Field. We're gonna talk about some other Sidequest gaming goodness. So thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Bye bye.
See you later.